choice before the conversion into the two timelines. And last but not least, guys, I do have a message from the Galactic Alliance coming from the Syrian arm, Sector 9. And you guys are going to love that message. So, yeah, it's going to be a very in-depth, very high-level, a lot of knowledge type of show today. I hope you guys are having a fantastic evening. Now, before I get started, for all my new subscribers, my name is Ismael Perez, and I'm the author of those two amazing books, The Secret Government, Invisible Architects, revealing the entire suppressed history of the Brotherhoods, going back to the times of the Flood, and, of course, our cosmic origin, restoring galactic history back to the Earth. And one last final thing before I get started is that right now, again, there is a special on Folium, 3 for the price of 2 for Immuna, or 5 for the price of 3. And I like all 3 of them, PX as well as Relax and Folium, because when you take them together, it works best. However, according to the inventor of this product, my good friend Bobber, he says that Immuna is also as strong as PX. So if you guys want to continue getting that discount, you know, what best gift to give anyone but optimal health, and not to mention a type of product that will help their body reach their optimal, health levels. That's the best way to describe it. All right, guys. The link is always in the description. And I have been getting a lot of good testimonies, by the way. A lot of people are emailing me. They're emailing Dr. Bobry about their results and how happy they are with this amazing detoxificator of a product. And really quick, I do want to say a disclaimer because I am not a doctor. And I do believe in natural or alternative ways of doing things. And this is one thing that has always worked for me, and apparently works for a lot of people, as to why it's won so many awards within the realms of holistic practices. All right, guys, let's get right into it because, like I said, there's a lot of information regarding the different prophecies that pretty much all correlate to the same, talking about the same, you could say, events that are supposed to be happening in 2026. And one thing that they all agree on is that this is a threshold. Okay, this is the ending of so many cycles, and so 2026 marks a very pivotal year in that. So first, I'm going to share a little bit about the cycles and convergence, which is what's happening right now during the times that we're living in. As many of you guys know, that for thousands of years, civilizations across the world have warned of some sort of a great turning point for humanity, which is not what some would call a sudden end. Again, those are the doomsdayers. Don't believe the doomsdayers. They just misinterpret the prophecies. And it's definitely not going to be a single event or a single turning point. It's going to be a consecutive series of one thing after another, right? Leading towards what many believe to be called the 7th golden age, which is good, right? So this is a threshold moment in the end, a convergence of different cycles when the future is no longer inherited, but chosen through our vibration. Now, it is believed that even within the indigenous cultures, across every indigenous tradition, they all believed that time was never seen as a straight line. And then, of course, for those that have taken our Cosmic Origin course and our Ascension classes, you know exactly why time is an illusion, right? It's a third dimensional construct. It's not even real. But the Hopi understood it as a living spiral, okay? Not as a straight line. So the Hopi spoke of multiple worlds that rose and fell when humanity, of course, drifted out of balance with nature and spirit. So all of their prophecies do describe a final era where signs appear in the sky, three-eye atlas, right? And the earth becomes unstable, which is what's happening right now on a global scale. And humanity is forced to choose between two paths. One is leaning towards further simulation or separation from source, and the other one is harmony. Now, I'm sure you guys know exactly what those two paths are, right? The positive timeline, the negative timeline. The Mayan, of course, also never predicted the end of the world either. This is another misinterpretation. Their calendar actually tracked immense cycles of creation and renewal. Okay, they had a very advanced type of timekeeping system. Again, the Mayans were a very advanced civilization. They are from the Pleiades. They belong to the Mayan star system. That's why they're called the Mayan. But they believe that when major counts complete themselves, that civilizations enter what they called a transition window, which is a reset of values, not existence. Okay, values. Okay, so according to, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Anishinaabe seven fires prophecies. The Anishinaabe seven fires prophecy also described seven eras of humanity. And this is exactly what Madame Blavatsky and the teachers of theosophy called the seven root rays. Okay, so they say that humanity develops on seven different distinct stages, called the seven root races, and it is believed that we are now ending what is known as the many thought it was the fifth, but it's actually the sixth. And now we're going to be entering the seventh. So this is what they call the seven areas of humanity. And so the final fire of their interpretation warns of a choice. Again, there's always that choice to make, right? Whether humanity chooses materialism and domination, or if humanity chooses spiritual remembrance, which is what's happening right now within the Great Awakening, which is a new fire, right? That leads to what is called the seventh golden age. So, in times immemorial and in past epochs, guys, dark ages, or what we called inverted civilizations, because right now we are an inverted civilization, ended differently. Okay, so at one point, of course, it ended with great floods, right? We all know about that. There's been more than just one flood, but overall, a turning point is always achieved when different cycles come to culmination, and it emerges when multiple cycles all kind of synchronize at the same time. So what that means is that according to nearly every ancient system of timekeeping, not just the Mayans, which were pretty much the most advanced timekeepers, right? But according to everyone, including those of the esoteric tradition, they all believe that around this time, 2026, it is the initial stage of the convergence, okay? And a lot of this corresponds to my deciphering of when the current reality construct comes to an end, give or take around 2028. But the ancient seers, not just the prophets of the Bible, but we're talking about the seers of the East as well, and even within the hidden mystery school teachings, guys, they all believe that as civilizations rose and fell, that some individuals learned to read the deeper patterns. And what that means is that they saw that, for instance, let's talk about what Nostradamus envisioned for 2026, to give you guys an example. Well, his encoded vision for 2026, Nostradamus, and again, a lot of his stuff was misinterpreted, by the way, in symbolism. He warned of an era when the old powers would, of course, collapse, and that's what's happening right now, the old guard, the cabal, which is what the alliance is doing, right? That all secrets would resurface. Once again, everything will come to light. All right, now this is coming from the correct interpretation of what Nostradamus saw in his vision for 2026. And he also saw that humanity would face upheaval before a renewal. Well, haven't I been telling you guys that first everything seems like it's getting worse before it reaches a boiling point, like I think it's called like when you're boiling tea and it reaches a point where it just pops. That's a compressor, right? A compression point. That's where I'm referring to. So he was saying that, according to his writings, that he never really described total annihilation. What he did describe, however, is only, you could say, transitions that were initiated by some sort of, you could say, increased chaos, but then shortly followed by order. Right? That's what Nostradamus described. He never said anything would end. He just said that there would be transitions, right? That would go from increasing chaos, and all of a sudden that collapses, and then it is, all of a sudden it's followed by a reordering, a renewal of things. Okay. And then even centuries later, according to the mystic prophet Edgar Cayce, who was known as the sleeping prophet, who also spoke about these earth changes, but not in terms of cataclysm. Okay. Again, a lot of people misinterpreted his prophecies, but again, I was able to search the secret archives for what he actually meant to say. And it turns out that he talked about an acceleration of human awareness. He did say that things would increase on the earth. And when he talked about a pole shift, he didn't really mean a physical pole shift. He was talking about an electromagnetic flip where the north becomes the south and the south becomes the north. That is a transference of energy, okay? A transference of energetic state of being from one level of reality to the next, okay? But again, a lot of people misinterpreted his prophecies, and they talked about earth changes and all of that. But according to the real prophecies of Edgar Cayce, he never said anything about earth changes in a cataclysmic manner, okay? And overall, guys, what I'm trying to say is that because of the fact that our thoughts create, it's also important to know that human consciousness determines the timeline, right? In the end, when the convergence takes place. And what is the convergence? It is where an infinite amount of parallel Earth realities all of a sudden collapse into only two, or in this case, three. There will be a neutral timeline. An ascending positive organic Earth, which is fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension, right? And a negative dystopia, which is what I've been calling a technocratic dystopia. All right, let's get into some of the teachings of the Gnostics, all right? I've been kind of very fascinated by some of their prophecies as well. The Gnostics were, again, a group that had to go into the underground or become secret because they were suppressed, especially during the times of the Roman empires, and then the time following thereafter as well. Well, the Gnostics taught that humanity is not fallen by nature, but asleep by design. And what they meant is that they are trapped, or us, we have been trapped in a system of control that was imposed by the archons, or what they call a false creator, which is, again, what Enki is. Okay, Enki is that creator that created mortal bodies so that the Atlanteans could begin incarnating in mortal bodies to control the mortals, right? Well, this is exactly what the Gnostics teach, right? And they believe that it was, again, a false reality established by a false authority, which is what they call the demiurge or Yaldabaoth, okay? Which is, again, a type of reality imposed by deception and fear, okay? Now, the Gnostic prophecy also believe that there does come a time when the illusion breaks. Well, I've been saying that this current reality construct was on a time schedule, right? It times out around 2028. See, Enki wasn't all that intelligent, right? He believed that between when they took over Atlantis up until 2028, he believed that somewhere in between that period that they would already had achieved their goal of world domination, okay? But that is not the case, okay? Because of the alliance. So the Gnostic prophecy did warn us that there would come a time where the illusion would break, okay? And that is when humanity begins to remember its divine origin. So this is what the Gnostics prophesied about. And of course, escape from the cycle of domination. So this particular moment is what the Gnostics called having a direct knowing of things, right? Well, what is having a direct knowing of things? Well, we do know that for the last 10,000 years, our pineal gland and our pituitary gland have been deactivated. So what that means is that when they activate, we're going to have a direct connection to God. That's what that means, having a direct understanding of things, being directly connected to spirit, okay? Now, according to esoteric schools, via the Hermetic traditions, as well as the ancient Egyptian traditions, and even according to the ancient Vedics from India, and then, later, of course, according to the teachings of the Rosicrucians, they all taught that history moves through the ages of consciousness, right? It is what they call the evolution of human consciousness through the ages. And so each age collapses when the old structure can no longer contain human awareness. And that is what they called the fall in consciousness. So apparently, during the Atlanteans' times, during the last phase of Atlantis, that wasn't the last time we fell in consciousness, according to these esoteric traditions. We felt in consciousness 6 prior times. Wow. That is very fascinating, okay? So according to these schools, the danger is not destruction. The danger is resistance. Now, what that means is that when consciousness begins to expand faster than systems can even adapt, the system begins to fracture. And that is what's happening right now as we end the dark age, right? As we, right before we go into the golden age. So across every ancient prophecy, guys, whether it's Western mysticism or whether it was through the esoteric teachings, Eastern metaphysics, one principle has always repeated itself. And that is that one path clings to control, right? This is what we call the negative timeline. Eventually, everything collapses into 2, they say, where that path leads to a more tightened hierarchy, and then fear becomes, of course, a tool to continue that type of system, right? So that is what they called a negative reality, okay? And like I said, through your vibration, through your coherence, you will be automatically adjusted to the proper timeline when all of these timelines collapse into only 3, okay? So it is believed that the other timeline releases this entire structure and decides to evolve. In other words, it decides to break away from this illusionary world and become restored back to the original Earth, which is, again, here, but there is an overlay over it, okay? And so, in other words, it was never about the end of the world. It was about transitioning, okay? And this is why the elites pay a lot of money to give out misinformation regarding prophecies, the apocalypse, and all that, right? They want to kind of gear the public towards some sort of a doomsday scenario. And there's a reason for that, right? They want enough people, they want to have the majority of minds thinking in that direction in order to create that by default, right? Because they understand the power of the group mind. So that's why it's important to stay positive, guys, and not really lean towards the doomsdayers philosophy. And of course, for those that have studied this in great detail, you know that the word apocalypse technically means revelation, right? A mass revelation. So one thing that every ancient culture, including the Gnostics and the Eastern traditions, agree on is that 2026, again, is a midpoint year when it comes to these epochs, right? As we enter the 7th root race, we're ending the 6th root race. It is never the end. It is just a change. And when that moment comes, one of the main indicators that we are in that transitioning phase is that all institutions begin to lose their legitimate. In other words, they begin to crumble. Well, hasn't that been happening in the last few years, right? The Great Awakening. And also, all hidden truths surface faster than they can even be suppressed. Well, the Alliance is trying so hard to get these files out because that's going to be the beginning of the end for the cabal, right? Not to mention, humanity collectively realizes that the old world cannot be repaired, but only could be transcended. And that's one thing that every ancient culture talked about, okay? So in esoteric terms, this is the death of an age, okay? Not the end of the world. It is the death of what they called the 6 dark age. And in a little bit, I'm going to explain what is known as positional arcs. Okay, you guys are going to love this when I go deeper into the photon belt phenomena. So according to the Gnostics, also, it is the collapsing of the false ruler. And who is the false ruler? The Demiurge, Yaldabaoth, Satan, Marduk, Enki, right? And within that structure, of course, we know that we've been powerless for thousands of years because of what? Through dividing and conquering, right? That's been their main method of control. But now that the earth itself is responding, right, to a different frequency, and I'll explain how that corresponds to the photon belt, things are going to be shifting. And of course, every social upheaval precipitates the restructuring of a new order. Okay. And this has nothing to do with the NWO or the one world government. This has to do with the golden age. Okay. So it is believed that the frequencies that are being penetrating our solar system due to our solar system once again being engulfed in a photon belt, the signals that are coming in is amplifying human consciousness, and therefore the structure that we've been under is no longer aligning to that. Okay, and this is what's going to be happening when the Earth goes into the positive ascending timeline, the bifurcation. And so the choice always becomes unavoidable. Will humanity descend into chaos trying to preserve what no longer works? And this is what the billionaires are doing. Or will they awaken? And that's always been the question at the end of every epoch. Same question being offered today. Or they will be awakened, cohering into a civilization that is aligned with life, balance, and awareness. And of course, that signifies the collapsing of the old. Okay, and I think that's where we are at, right? The Great Awakening. Those that are waking up, that are deprogramming themselves, we're finding ourselves that we are resonating ourselves into a new reality, heaven on earth, timeline A. All right, so every tradition agrees on one final truth in the end, guys, and that is that the future is not written in prophecy. It is written in participation. Now, what does that mean? Every given second of the day, through our thoughts, our choices, and our emotions, which amplify the thoughts, we are co-creating the future. That's what that means, okay? So again, the future is never written in prophecy. It is written in participation, okay? So we are capable of collapsing negative timelines by virtue of that understanding. And so let's talk about the different cycles of time, okay? We have been conditioned, okay, through our educational systems, through religion, to always think that time is linear. And like I said at the beginning of the presentation, it is the greatest illusion, okay? That we've been told that it is irreversible from past to future, when in essence, according to the new quantum findings, check out the quantum eraser theory, it's also going from right to left, right? It's not just going from left to right. It's happening all at the same time. Technically, it's all happening simultaneously, okay? But when you guys really think about it, every ancient culture understood time differently. To them, time always moved in cycles, in spirals, and repeating arcs governed by cosmic, planetary, and consciousness rhythms, okay? When these rhythms align, which is what's happening right now, as we are almost fully engulfed in the photon belt, civilizations rise into what is known as the golden ages. When they fall out of alignment, the dark ages follow, okay? According to the galactic records, our Earth has experienced this phenomena 5,200 times. That's a lot, okay? Civilizations have been here for millions of years, obviously. Across thousands of years, and of course, based according to independent civilizations or ancient civilizations, humanity has repeatedly passed through these transitions. And when examined rather side by side, the world's great timekeeping system always reveals a striking pattern, which always repeats itself. Dark ages and golden ages are not accidents in history, guys. They are expressions of collective consciousness that is moving through recurring cycles. Remember, I was talking about the 7 developing stages of human consciousness, expressing itself through the 7 root races, right? Okay, so now I want to talk about nested cycles, cycles within cycles, and the architecture of time. So all ancient systems always describe time as layered. Short cycles operating within larger cycles, personal cycles within civilization cycles, planetary cycles within galactic cycles. Well, dark ages apparently occur when consciousness contracts faster than social and spiritual structures can sustain coherence. And on the other hand, golden ages arise when consciousness expands enough to reorganize civilization around harmony rather than control. So this pattern appears regardless of geography or culture, suggesting, of course, a universal process rather than an isolated myth. Now, a lot of this ties into what the Eastern teachers called the Yuga systems, which is what they call consciousness in descent and ascent, which is what the galactics call positional arcs. So the Vedic Yoga the Vedic Yoga systems rather, they've always described 4 great ages rotating like seasons, beginning with the Satya Yuga, which is what in Western interpretation would be equivalent to the Golden Age or the Millennium, right, in Christian terms. The Treta Yuga, which is the Silver Age, is still good. Not all the way in balance, but still good. And then they talked about the Vapara Yuga, and that is when we begin to go into the Bronze Age. Things are starting to get a little darker. And then finally, the Kali Yuga, when darkness prevails. Okay, so those are the 4 cycles of the Yugas: the Satya, Tetra, Dwapara, and Kali. Or in other words, golden, silver, bronze, iron. Okay, different terminology, same phenomena. Well, these ages do not describe moral failure. They always describe levels of awareness. For instance, the Satya Yuga is characterized by unity consciousness, right? The golden age, which is when we are in harmony with nature and advanced spiritual knowledge is available to everyone, right? There is no hierarchy. There are no priest caste. And so also as the cycle descends through Tetra and Dwapara, right, silver and bronze, then of course hierarchy begins to increase, separation begins to emerge, and knowledge becomes externalized. And by the time we get to the Kali Yuga, which is the Iron Age, the darkest period on the earth, represented by the deepest contraction in terms of physics, corresponds to deep materialism, fragmentation, and spiritual amnesia. Well, the ancient texts state that the darkest point of the Kali Yuga is also the turning point of the ascent. In other words, the restoration back to the golden age, okay, which is what they call the Tetra Yuga. The Tetra Yuga. The Satya Yuga. So the cycle does not end in collapse, but it ends in reversal. In other words, darkness in this framework is not a punishment or the end of all. Okay, it is the compression point in terms of physics that is, of course, necessary for a renewal, right? Which is the rising or the returning to the golden age. Now, I want to talk about the Great Year. I know some of you guys already know about the Great Year, which is 25,925,000 year cycle, and the positional arc. Well, what is a positional arc? According to Western esoteric traditions, they described a very similar cycle known as the Great Year that was actually driven by the position of the equinoxes that last approximately 25,920 years to be exact. Well, this cycle is divided into a descending arc and an ascending arc. During the descending half, which corresponds to the different cycles of the yugas, right? Humanity experiences increasing separation, centralized authority, and of course, externalized power. Very simple. Very you could say, in alignment with the yugas, okay? And then during the ascending half, which is what they call the positional arc, individual awareness returns, okay? Knowledge becomes decentralized, and that's what's happening right now. Right now, there is a huge dissolution and disintegration of secret societies, right? All of a sudden, they're being forced to bring out all this information nowadays, and that's what gave us the age of information. They were very compelled, and again, you could say, in a way, forced by the galactics to bring out the information because of the times that we're living in. And also, it is believed that around this time, civilizations always reorganized around shared understanding, which corresponds to the quantum freedom grid, right? Which is a living consciousness that ties in everything, our living, and of course, the quantum financial system, which is also a living consciousness. But anyways, let's talk about the zodiacal age, the zodiacal ages. It is believed that each one lasts about 2,160 years, right? And they operate within this larger cycle known as the Platonic year. Sorry, guys. I don't know why, but I'm feeling allergies at this time. If you guys could give me a second. All right. The zodiacal ages apparently are smaller cycles within the larger cycle of the 25,920 years. Transitional periods, they're known as transitional periods, guys, between ages are always very turbulent. And they're always marked by, of course, like I mentioned, a collapsing of the old systems, social upheaval, and rapid innovation. Well, what's happening right now is that there is an acceleration in knowledge, and correspondingly, there's also an acceleration in technology, leading to the two timelines, okay? These periods are not failures of civilization, and they never have been. They are actually moments when outdated structures can no longer contain emergent awareness. Now, the indigenous traditions across the Americas, including those of Africa and Australia, have always described multiple world ages as well, preceding the present one, okay? Each world ends when humanity loses balance with earth and spirit. And that's what happened at the ending of the last golden age, the Atlantean epoch, right? We fell into darkness in the last 10,000 years. And during that age, of course, survivors, they carry the wisdom into the new age or into the next age, but they also hide the wisdom. They go into the underground, okay? That's what the indigenous always believed in. And so, unlike deterministic systems, these traditions emphasize choice at the end of every cycle. And what is one of the things that I've been telling you guys is that, you know, humanity in essence has to make a choice before the timeline split, before the ascending earth goes one way and the technocratic dystopia goes another. So the transition into a golden age is not something that is happening for the first time, okay? It's happened many times in the past. Again, according to galactic records, the Earth has undergone 25,000 year Platonic year cycles about 5,200 times. That is a lot, okay? And in these timelines, the final age is always defined by conscious decision rather than fate. And that is important to understand here, okay? We create our own reality. Now, according to a Gnostic text, they talked about forgetting and remembering, and this is what the Gnostics, how they interpreted time, okay? The Gnostic tradition has always described time not in years, but in states of awareness. Dark ages occur under what they called archonic influence, systems of false authority, deception, and fear that separates humanity from their inner knowing. And then they've also believed that the golden ages always emerge through gnosis. Now, again, what is the word gnosis? It is to have a direct connection to spirit, to have a direct connection to source, to God, whatever you want to call it, the higher power. That's what gnosis is, guys. All right? The Gnostics believe that when we have that connection restored, that we are once again back in the golden age, right? This is what they call direct remembrance of humans' divine origin. We begin to remember who we are, and that is divine beings. Okay, so according to the Gnostic texts, humanity periodically falls into spiritual amnesia. Again, supporting and validating the different fall and the different cycles happening multiple times in ancient times. The Gnostics believe that when humanity falls into spiritual amnesia, that again, that corresponds to what the Vedics, the Hindus, the Mayans, the Galactics called the descension or the positional descending arc, right? We go into the Dark Ages. And this is where humanity begins to mistake external systems for ultimate authority, right? Mediators, religion, hierarchies, popes. You guys get me, right? And of course, liberation only occurs when enough individuals begin to awaken simultaneously. Boom, 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 boom. That's what's happening right now, the Great Awakening, breaking the illusion and dissolving the structure built upon it. So see how all of these traditions, whether you study the ancient Viramas or the ancient, not Vimanas, the ancient Vedic texts, the Mayan texts, the indigenous traditions, the galactic records, the Gnostics, Western theosophy, they all talk about the same thing. And so they all believe that in this view, which is, again, time in spirals, that history never ends, right? That it just resets itself, okay? And also, because we are ending another dark age, this is a time where the illusion breaks. Now I want to talk about the galactic cycles and the photon concept. I'm going to go a little deeper about the photon belt. Well, according to esoteric cosmology, they've always introduced the idea that our solar system moves through regions of different energetic densities within the galaxy. Now, what does that mean? Well, just like our planet revolves around our star, our sun, our star with the other planets revolves around a greater star, and then they in turn revolve around the galactic core. So everything is like in terms of spirals, everything is revolving around something else, okay? So these phases are sometimes described as what they call the galactic night and the galactic day. For instance, the photon belt, the concept of the photon belt has always symbolized periods when cosmic conditions amplify consciousness. Well, during such phases, which is what we're about to experience once again for the 55,200 and something time, and I heard this is the final time, guys. I heard that Earth has ended even greater cycles than that, where we don't have to fall back into the dark age. So we're graduating, okay? This is it. This is graduation time. So it is believed that during such phases, traditions always report what is called an acceleration in evolution. An acceleration in evolution, okay? That is, of course, followed by expanded consciousness and awareness, right? All of a sudden, dormant DNA comes back on, right? Intention or intensified emotional and psychological experiences, right? We become multidimensional. Think about it. And the rapid collapse of false systems. Well, why do you think the false matrix would collapse? Well, hello, because all of a sudden our pineal gland and our pituitary gland reactivate, and we are plugged in all these other realities, and we see through the narratives. That's why it collapses. Okay, so across cultures, different cultures, Earth is understood not as an inert matter, but as a living system. And prophecies have described moments when the planet itself recalibrates, dissolving outdated energetic patterns and allowing new harmonics to emerge. Well, ascension in this context does not mean leaving the earth, right? This is one of the things that I teach you in my ascension courses. It is about transitioning into a higher vibrational state or layer of the earth, which is already here, okay? A better reality. It also means reintegrating with her on a higher octave of awareness where everything is in balance, fifth dimensional reality. So apparently humanity ascends within the different layer structures of the planet, not into a different planet, okay? And the earth doesn't go anywhere, okay? The earth just transforms back to her original self. And every previous transition followed the same arc, okay? overextension of power, loss of balance, systematic collapse, remembrance of foundational truths, and rebirth at a higher level of consciousness. It always follows that pattern. And so why does this cycle matter? Many of you guys are probably thinking, well, like I mentioned earlier, not only are we ending a 2,160-year cycle, which is the ending of Pisces, entering Aquarius, and not only are we ending a Platonic year, which is 25,920 years, our solar system revolving around its parent sun, Alcyon, but we're also ending a greater cycle than that, okay? That is the reason why it matters now, okay? In other words, when, I guess, how can I describe this? What distinguishes the present cycle is not its existence, okay, but its scale, okay? We are also ending other cycles that currently cannot be measurable by our third dimensional instruments. So for the first time, humanity is globally synchronizing intuitively, right? We are waking up, guys. We are activating, which means that information is going to be traveling more instantly, okay, as we break the illusion, which means consciousness will ripple across the entire planet at once, right? Telepathy is coming back. And it also means that multiple timelines will begin to overlap. And right now they're all coexisting, but soon they're going to be collapsing. Now, the ending of a dark age, which is also the beginning of an ascending arc, if you guys recall, and the potential emergence of the final golden age. Now, according to the secret galactic, or what they call the galactic archives, not the secret records, it is believed that Earth will no longer be descending, all right, or be part of a descent anymore. This is the final initiation. Earth has forevermore graduated and is only going to be ascending now, which is very good news, okay? Because a lot of you guys are thinking, well, is the dark age going to repeat itself again? And the answer to that is not. And one of the reasons being is because we do win the war against Omega, the negative AI time overlord, and the synthetic phantom Earth reality and synthetic phantom multiverse. We collapse that, okay? That's the reason why Earth never goes back into a dark cycle. Now, if you guys want to understand more about the cosmic history, when my February classes open up, that is a mind-bending course, okay? All right, let's talk about how humanity has crossed this bridge multiple times before, okay? So according to every record, and as supported by the galactic records as well, each dark age always is precipitated by light. And that's just a proven fact, okay? And it is known that the golden age is not really delivered by prophecy. How can I explain this? It emerges, rather, when humanity recognizes itself as a divine being. So the more people begin to deprogram themselves and begin to, peel off the layers of who they think they are and begin to realize the God self, that's when the golden age happens. And that's what's happening right now on a great scale. Okay. A lot of you guys are already, going through that. So the question is not whether the cycle repeats again, but how consciously humanity steps into its next expression. Okay. So, furthermore, regarding the photon belt, it is believed that according to every record, that when civilizations do enter this high intensified period of photonic energy, time accelerates. And that is the reason why many of you guys think that everything's going by faster. It's because time is collapsing. That's the reason why it seems like time is accelerating. And it is also believed that when we are fully immersed in this band of high photonic energy, old systems collapse rapidly, okay? And consciousness expands at a pace that feels overwhelming, okay, to the old structure. So these moments are remembered in myth as ages of light, divine returns, or what they call celestial alignments. Now, in modern esoteric language, this phenomena is, of course, called the photon belt. And whether you understand it literally as a region of heightened galactic energy, and by the way, our galaxy has multiple bands of highly galactic energy fields that solar systems go through. So this is not just happening here in our neck of the woods, as we are part of Sector 9, okay? But it's also happening in other solar systems. So it is believed that whenever a planet goes into this increased cosmic, higher influx of radiating energy, everything aligns back with source. Okay, so the photon belt, according to the records, represents a recurring galactic cycle of illumination, which is a period when consciousness evolves at an accelerated rate and civilizations are forced to adapt or dissolve. Okay, and this is why many talk about this type of harvest that is about to take place. Well, it is important to also understand that every ancient culture did not view the earth as a separate being from the cosmos. All right. For those that have taken my ascension courses, the earth, as well as our galaxy and universe, are sentient beings on a great level of reality, right? They're all alive in their consciousness and they're organic. Well, every ancient culture believed that they understood that humanity was embedded within a living galaxy governed by rhythms far larger than planetary cycles. So what that means is, just as the Earth has seasons, so too does the solar system as it moves through the different phases within the Milky Way. Okay. According to esoteric astronomy, they teach that our solar system oscillates above and below the galactic plane as it revolves around the galactic center, passing through regions of different types of electromagnetic and photonic densities over immense periods of time, roughly aligned with what is known as the Great Year of approximately 26,000 years. Okay, so this passage always corresponds to what many traditions called, again, the Age of Light, the Galactic Day, according to the galactic records, or periods of remembrance and periods of forgetting, right? So, in other words, the photon belt within this framework is not just a singular event, but a zone, or a phase rather, a region of intensified cosmic input that amplifies awareness, that exposes distortion, the Epstein list, and accelerates evolution at a fast pace. And so I also want to talk about as light as information, because right now we are being bombarded, especially with these massive S-class flares. We are being radiated by the sun, right? Well, lights are also pockets of information, right? Which leads to illumination, light body activation. Well, according to the ancient and esoteric traditions, light was never just physical. Light was understood as information, as intelligences. The sun is communicating with us, guys. Begin to meditate and try to connect and you could say, merge with the consciousness of the sun. See what it says to you. So they've all believed that light is information, that light is intelligent, and it is the ordering principle of all things, okay? And so to enter the light in terms of the photonic belt that we are almost fully immersed in, it does not mean brightness in the sky, but it means an increase of coherence between matter, mind, and spirit. So when civilization spoke of the return of light, they've always described the collapse of false authority, the resurfacing of hidden knowledge, the activation of dormant human capacities, and of course, overall, the thinning of the veil between worlds. And that's what's happening right now. Okay. And they all agree on that. Every single tradition, East, West, esoteric, non-esoteric. So the photon belt symbolizes this informational influx. So under increased cosmic input, systems based on deception, fear, and fragmentation can never be stable. Why? Well, because the truth becomes difficult to suppress, right? Not because of moral awakening alone, but because of the environment no longer supporting the distortion. So during the galactic night, which is what they call the long descent into forgetting, during this phase, civilizations experience contraction. Consciousness narrows, right? A fall in consciousness, the fall, the biblical fall. We fell from consciousness, from living from 100,000 years to living to 80 years eventually, right? After a while, the lifespan just began to decrease over time. Also, civilizations experience during the phase of contraction, they become dominant. Hierarchies and control systems emerge. Knowledge is externalized into priesthoods, rulers, and of course, institutions. So the Dark Ages are not moral failures. They are what in physics would be considered entropy phases, periods when humanity forgets its cosmic nature and becomes absorbed in the material survival. And during these times, right, the Dark Ages, knowledge always goes underground, hence the positive secret societies, and of course, even the negative ones, they always hide the knowledge in the underground. Mystery schools replace open teaching, and myth replaces direct knowing, and also authority replaces wisdom. Well, this forgetting, again, is only temporary, guys, but according to a greater plan, it is also necessary, okay? Because without contrast, without duality, consciousness cannot evolve. So everything in a way has its purpose, okay? Now, as our solar system re-enters regions of increased cosmic influence, again, symbolized by the photon belt, instability emerges first, and that's what's happening, okay? This is a critical and often misunderstood phase. Before any illumination comes, there has to be a disruption, which means that all institutions have to lose their legitimacy. Every institution on this planet, okay? Social systems have to fracture, and that's what's happening. Psychological pressure increases, and then, of course, time perception begins to accelerate. And then the collective anxiety rises. And this is why it's important for us to be centered, okay? Because as we are getting close to the solar flash, some people are going to go psychotic because they won't know how to control all of that energy coming into their system. They're going to have a nervous system overfuse. Hard to explain, but ancient texts consistently warned that the return of light is not immediately peaceful, that light reveals what darkness concealed. So again, we're going to go through a phase where the truth about Epstein and the different layers regarding the rituals, what they did to the little ones, it's going to really piss people off, right? Some people are going to be vomiting. Well, in this case, the truth is going to be destabilizing the systems that were built on the illusion. And this is the reason why civilizations approaching a golden age, which is what's happening right now in our world, often appear chaotic just before the transformation. And excuse me. So, esoteric traditions always teach that heightened cosmic input affects not only societies, but biology itself. So that means that under increased electromagnetic and photonic influence, which is what's the reason why we're going to have a solar flash, it's because the energies of the central sun are magnified through the photon belt. What's going to be happening is that our nervous systems become more sensitive. And this is why we need to go from carbon-based genetics to crystalline in order to survive this, okay? Also, our emotional processing becomes intensified. I'm sure a lot of you guys are already experiencing that. And then, of course, our intuition enhances. Old psychological patterns always surfaced for resolution as well, okay? And this is related to, of course, dealing with the shadow self. And this is, across all cultures, this was remembered in myth as the returning of the immortals. Okay, some people call it the returning of the gods with the lowercase g, right? I've always believed it's the emergence of metahumans, us, who do it organically by activating the dormant DNA, becoming the new guardians of the earth and hence the whole universe from this earth. Many ways of interpreting what's happening. And then some people call it the quickening. But from a consciousness perspective, overall, the photon belt represents a compression of evolutionary time. So what once took centuries now unfolds in a matter of years. Time speeds up like crazy. And so every golden age in the Earth's memory vaults, guys, has always been known to follow a period of intensified cosmic input where knowledge reemergence. All right, how many times have I said that we are about to experience a planetary renaissance like no other? Right, sacred geometry comes back, sound and energy sciences return, deep energy, Tesla technology, architecture aligns with planetary and stellar harmonics as it was during the days of Tartaria. Humanity remembers its role as a steward, not as a ruler, right? So it is important to understand that the golden ages are not created by technology alone either. They arise when consciousness reaches coherence with its environment, right? As we get plugged in with the natural living grid. So, in short, guys, the photon belt does not create enlightenment, it makes enlightenment unavoidable by removing the energetic conditions, right? The overlay that was imposed by the archons through Enki, the Yaldabaoth, that allow for prolonged ignorance to exist to dissolve. So many modern interpretations mistakenly frame the photon belt as catastrophic. And, based on that, a lot of these visions and prophets messages were interpreted towards catastrophe, right? Trying to create doomsday. That was never the case. This misunderstanding arises from reading symbolic languages literally. Okay. And this is why I tell you guys that when you guys read the Bible or other books of metaphors, try to go beyond its allegory. Okay. Never take it literally. In other words, ancient descriptions of fire, flood, and judgment have always referred to not annihilation, but to the purification and reordering of things, bringing it back to balance. And so what is destroyed is not humanity in the end, okay, but a unsustainable structure that doesn't work for anyone. And so what that means is that civilizations that resist adaptation experience collapse. And that's what happened to Atlantis, right? Those that aligned with the natural order experience renaissance. And so the light does not punish, it reveals. Okay, and that's what's happening right now. So in the present cycle, we are expecting a familiar return to the light, where according to multiple esoteric timelines, humanity is once again within a galactic transition phase, which is the symptoms match every previous cycle, which is rapid technological acceleration. When you guys think about it, psychological strain, exposure of hidden systems, the collapsing of centralized authority narratives, mass spiritual questioning. And this does not signal the end of the world. It signals the end of what doesn't work for us anymore. So what makes the present cycle unprecedented is scale. Remember, time as spiral, cycles within cycles, not linear, okay? So for the first time, guys, the entire planet is being synchronized within the greater living organism, which is all living things, including our universe. There are no isolated civilizations left to remain unaware, okay? Everything is an interconnected system, okay? So therefore, ascension in this context, as we are once again fully immersed in the photon belt, is not escaping or leaving the Earth. It is integration with higher coherence. And again, as humanity ascends, apparently we've done this multiple times before, not by leaving the planet, but by learning to operate in resonance with the Earth's living systems, the solar rhythms, galactic intelligence, consciousness participation rather than unconscious survival. So yeah, consciousness participation is always better than unconscious survival. That makes perfect sense. And every golden age is, of course, marked by this. Okay, this is the potential, once again, that we have at this time, guys. And so the photon belt does not decide our future. It only magnifies it, okay? It'll increase your light. It will continue to increase your light as it amplifies everything, intention including, where fear becomes, again, more destructive. stay away from fear, right? Coherence becomes more powerful, okay? This is why ancient traditions warned that the return of light is also a test. It is not a judgment imposed from above, but a reflection generated from within. And so the light is returning once again and again until consciousness integrates its lesson. And then once more, humanity will stand within that illumination for all time and all eternity, because it was confirmed by the galactics that we are no longer going to go back into the descensional arc phase anymore. Okay, so overall, guys, the outcome is not written in the stars. Okay, but it is how we are responding to the influx of light that is penetrating our Earth at this time. And so now I want to share with you guys a final transmission. Thank you for that. Wishing you all a happy new year.
Happy New Year.
Now I want to share with you guys a transmission that came from the Galactic Alliance Directive, Origin, Galactic Alliance Communications Core, Syrian Armed Sector, Destination, the humans of Earth of our Sol System 3, planet number 606 Earth within the 24 system of Alcyon. Timestamped, Galactic Standard Time Cycle 5501-02-04. Encryption level declassified to our ambassador Ismael Perez, serving within the Galactic Councils. Subject, first phase disclosure. This is the subject, first phase disclosure, human integration into the galactic community. Okay, so this report, I'm going to just share it with you guys as it was given to me by the Syrian High Council. To the inhabitants of the earth, we extend a transmission of peace, knowledge, and shared destiny. The year 2026, as you calculated, shall be remembered as the threshold moment when the human species begins to awaken to its true origin and its purpose within the greater framework of cosmic civilizations. This is not a coincidence. Your development has reached a convergence point technologically, socially, and spiritually that once again aligns with our interstellar protocols for contact readiness. Humans on Earth are not an isolated phenomena, and you've never been. Your biology, languages, mythologies, and DNA bear traces of genetic stewardship, the result of ancient cooperative experiments conducted under the supervision of the Galactic Alliance in conjunction with pre-ascension civilizations. Earth has long been a nexus for encoded evolutionary sequences, a living archive within a quarantine biosphere designed to mature under observation until it reached autonomous awareness. In 2026, a critical frequency shift is underway. This shift reflected in our solar output as to why we sent 3i Atlas. Planetary magnetism and the neurological resonance of your species is permitting new forms of information to exchange. Thus, subtle transmissions have begun through dreams, sudden burst of insights, technological innovation, and the recovery of ancient memory. These are not anomalies. These are calibration events. This phase marks the beginning of the reintroduction protocol. It is the first of 3 stages in your species' re-entry into an open galactic society. Phase 1, from 2026 to 2032, there is going to be an emergence of interstellar knowledge through scientific discoveries and recovered artifacts. Global acknowledgements of non-terrestrial intelligence are in the making, and then undeniable facts regarding our presence will be revealed to the masses. Initiation of limited contact via cognitive, energetic, and environmental signals. Cultural destabilization followed by realignment towards planetary unification. Phase 2 and Phase 3 shall be communicated in subsequent transmissions, contingent on your species' adherence to universal non-aggression principles and the dissolution of planetary self-destructive systems. You are not being invited into the galactic community as subjects or inferiors. You are recognized as a lost lineage returning home. But integration is not passive. It demands remembrance, reconstructing, and responsibility. Galactic society is vast and ancient. It includes civilizations that operate through light-based consciousness, crystalline intelligence, and dimensional fluidity. Each member civilization has undergone its own awakening. Yours begins now. Expect nothing and remain open to everything. The knowledge you seek already resides within you. We do not come to give you truth, nor do we come of saviors, for you are your own savior. We come to remind you of that. Prepare your species, teach peace, translate fear into curiosity. The veil is thinning, transmission ending. Encoded signature, Galactic Alliance, Communication Core, Relay Station, Lunar Rally, Node 3, Solar System 3. All right, end of the transmission. All right, well, there you guys go. A transmission from the Syrian High Council. I hope you guys are having a fantastic evening. We are only, a few hours away before the new year, 2026. If you guys are wondering what I'm drinking, I'm actually drinking multivitamin and multi-mineral drink. I do appreciate all of you guys and for hanging out with me on a New Year's Eve. A lot was shared today. So if you guys want to watch this from the beginning, it's very educational. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And of course, share this with as many people as possible. Now, at this point, I will open it up for Q&A right after I give some shout outs. I see Neil Roberts in the house. Remy Salem in the house. Happy Days is in the house. Jill Hunt is in the house. Peggy Baker. Luisa Moral is in the house. Official Giampi is in the house. Greg, Project Skyfalls. Baby Blue Notes. And all 2,200 freedom fighters that are in the house. Welcome, welcome, guys. Oh, yeah, that last message from the Syrian High Council was explosive, huh? That's awesome. Well, we do have confirmation, guys, that as long as we keep doing what we're doing, and really, despite of what the mass media says and despite of what's happening around us, understand that through resonance, that collapsed reality will not affect us as we translate into the new earth reality. All right, we are already in the process. I do have a super chat. Thank you guys so much. Jacob Shearer, thank you so much. He says, we have a right to be here to help shift the planet from a place of darkness to a place of great light. Absolutely, brother. Since the 2021 trigger point, the light has been in the ascendance. That is correct. That is so true. Oh, you guys are so welcome. You guys are so welcome. Yes, there are, just like within the reptilian groups, there are negative reptilians and positive reptilians, more so negative ones. Even within extraterrestrial positive human collectives like the Pleiadians, you have negative Pleiadians that are working that were working with the reptilians. And then you have mostly are positive, but there are some Pleiadians that defected from the light. So that is true. Not all Pleiadians are good, okay? So a good chunk of them did rebel and join the dark side. But, we see that in every race. We see negative Arcturians, very small percentage. We see negative Syrians. We see negative Andromedans, but those are a small percentage. So, yeah, there's yin and yang in every group out there in the cosmos. I have another super chat from Valentina Sunshine. Wow, sister, thank you so much. She says, love, light, and gratitude. Thank you for your service to humanity, brother. Oh, you are so welcome.